Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. My name's Nick and today I thought I'd talk about planning your vegetable patch or planning your allotment depending on where you are, in your journey of, growing your own. Okay, so you're either new to an allotment, which means you got a lot of digging or covering or something to do. I'm actually going to do a whole video about getting a new allotment very, very soon, so watch out for that. But let's say that you have a general idea, that you want to grow veg and you've got a general idea where your beds are going to go, yeah? Hopefully you've got a lovely south-facing allotment, which is super exciting, that's what I have, but also has limitations as well, because everything dries out super easily, okay? So, what are you going to grow? The first thing you need to think of, especially if you haven't done this a couple of times before, is what do you like eating? And what do you enjoy? So these could be two different things. So for example, if I go to the supermarket, I shop so differently than what I grow. And the main reason is, and my partner will tell you this, is because I'm really cheap. Yeah, so what are you excited about? What do you like eating? If your family like French beans, my family love French beans. They eat them like crazy. Well, they eat them like people that resentfully eat vegetables, I should say. So they eat them quite well. It's like the one vegetable that they'll both eat without like much complaint, that and carrots. So I always make sure that they're a thing that's being grown. I always think about what I like. So the most exciting thing for me personally to grow is tomatoes. I love the varieties. I like that you go from tiny little cherry tomatoes, black tomatoes, green tomatoes, pink tomatoes, red tomatoes, green, stripy tomatoes, furry tomatoes, to like beefsteak tomatoes, which can be any colour as well. So I really find those rather exciting, and you can like eat things that you've never tried before. Super cool. But the thing that like I use the most probably from the garden is garlic, okay? One of the most boring things to grow, because you just stick it in the ground and it grows and then you pull it out and it's like, yep, done my job. It's really reliable and cool and uncomplicated. Whereas tomatoes are they aren't super complicated, don't get me wrong, but they need to be like trellised, they need to be looked after, they need to be, make sure you don't have blight, you've got to prune them. They're a lot of work. They're like high maintenance. Garlic is low maintenance. They're together my favourite thing, and we all know that I really enjoy making tomato sauce, and I can tons and tons of tomato sauce for the year. So like those two things are super important to me. And then as an extension from that, I also grow chilies, peppers, aubergine, etc. And of course the humble courgette. It all goes into making tomato sauce, okay? So there's all linked. So my mission for 2 allotments and 2 gardens is to grow a jar of sauce. So that's my why. Your why might be completely different. Maybe you want to grow potatoes because you think potatoes in the supermarket are gross, which is fair because they are. Nothing's better than a homegrown potato. Not tomato. Perhaps you want to grow leeks because you make your own broth to put in tomato sauce. Maybe. Maybe you want to grow whatever, fruit, trees, whatever it is that makes you passionate. So you've got to kind of compromise. What will you eat? And what will make you so passionate that you'll go out there in the heat of summer. So those two have to be in balance. Because for me personally, and I'm not saying that this is something you should do, but if I'm like going outside and sometimes the heat is so much I actually feel physically sick, or like this year I had really bad morning sickness, but I still went out and did it. And the reason, my why pushing me, is that I want to have really, really high quality tasting food, and there's certain things I really enjoy. The potatoes that we get over the allotment, I'm telling you right now, you cannot buy them. Not because they're fancy varieties or something. I mean, I grow some purple and some pink ones, but it's because the flavour of a homegrown potato, so it's far superior than anything that you would get in the supermarket. So that's my why. That's what driving force for me. Additionally, you need to think about what space you have. If you've got a tiny little square, like say 5 by 5 bed, you're not going to be able to grow as much as if you had a whole allotment, or if you only have half an allotment, you need to take that into consideration. So really thinking about spacing is a really good thing. And well, we're going to go on to this into more detail a little bit later during the video, and explain how we do the spacings and stuff like that, and overcrowding, etc. But it's something you need in the back of your mind as you start to like fantasize and get a bit ambitious about your vegetable patch this year. And this is the time of year that we do that, isn't it? These are all the high hopes of the year. I know I make tons and tons of vows and promises to myself all year, starting now. So one thing you need to really think about, so you know what you're going to grow. You know you want carrots, you know you want, I don't know, aubergines and lettuce. Well, what about companion planting? I am a strong believer in growing flowers, and I genuinely, like, good 5 years ago, I would never thought I would be sitting here and saying, yes, grow flowers. I actually was well known for not liking flowers. I've never had a bunch of flowers in my life because I've never had the ambition to have bunches of flowers around me until very recently. I think as you get older, you're like, actually they're really nice. So as I've kind of got my own as a gardener, I've decided to grow way more flowers, and this is something that, once again, going back to our original point, brings me joy. I really enjoy seeing dahlias and cosmos and daffodils, tulips and stuff like that in the garden. I grow tons and tons of things that are completely unedible, and I really enjoy having them in the garden because they are truly beautiful, and they really bring in not just me into the garden, make me want to stay there and spend time, just look at things, take photos and stuff, which is important, but they bring in beneficial insects like your pollinators and your hoverflies, etc. Things that will deal with things like green fly, like ladybirds, etc., but also will pollinate your crops. I used to have to, back before I decided to grow any sort of flowers, I actually had to hand pollinate a lot of things, and you see a lot of people saying, oh yeah, have to hand pollinate things, and the issue that you have there is you're not attracting the bees and the bugs and etc. into your gardening patch, perhaps even spraying the gardening patch with loads of pesticides, which will not allow or set a bar for them so that they cannot come in and pollinate your plants, which is an issue. I really am really super lazy when it comes to some things about gardening, and I don't want to do hand pollinating on a size of my patch because it's going to take me all day. But we have terribly fantastic pollination, and I used to think, oh yeah, we get good pollination because we've got 2 beekeepers on the allotment, but now one of the beekeepers has moved off for the allotment because he's actually, long story short, but he's beekeeping full time, which is super cool, isn't it? And the other one, because we've got the farmer's field at the back and they spray, she lost her hive and hasn't got another one. I'm not sure why, but I think it was just really upsetting for her. So I was like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen about the pollination, and I got super worried and started planting loads more flowers, and as a result I have had wonderful pollination. So this year I'm definitely going to go ahead and sow more. Also with things like dahlias, I actually sow dahlias from seed, and dahlias are the most giveawayable present in the world because people love dahlias because they're gorgeous and they just make a really fab present. And Mother's Day is always coming up, and I always end up giving my mum tons of flowers and peppers, and she gives me a whole list. Like no joke, she started about November giving me a list. I'm like, we can't do this yet. Ask me nearer the time, I will forget. But dahlias, as she told me specifically, I have to give her loads of dahlias because she wants them in her garden beds. So that's super exciting, and it does make a great gift, birthdays, etc. And once you've grown them once, they turn into tubers. Put my teeth in, tubers, and the tubers are really good presents too because they're super expensive in the shops, and you can get loads of them with just a few scatterings of seeds. And I found them very easy to germinate, touch wood, because I want them to germinate this year, and I've actually left them in the ground each year, even though it says specifically to dig them up and not to leave them in the ground. I've actually gone ahead and left them in the ground, and that is really good because I don't want to dig them up, store them, put them back, you know, multiple times. So that has really worked out well for me personally. Also, when we talk about how much space you have, also having things like trellises, arcs, etc. There's like tons of things that you can do in allotment. I know that one of my allotment friends has a lean-to over, so her shed's here. Let me show you a dramatic representation. So this is her shed, the lean-to's here, it goes down like that because it leans to. And then she has a grapevine that grows up over the canopy. I think that looks dead cool, and it saves so much space, etc. Lots of people do that. I vertically grow my tomatoes, love doing that, and I find the main reason I do it is because I really find that having them growing upright reduces diseases. So sometimes with spacing, you've got to kind of think, okay, I could grow, I don't know, 1 tomato per square foot, but I live in a place that always gets blight. So perhaps I should put 2 foot between the tomatoes at the very least, so that I get that good airflow, and then I'll prune them. And then I'll grow them vertically so that I ensure that the blight will hit later or will be less severe. That's like what I have in my head personally. I also grow 60 tomatoes just in case. I keep getting potato and tomato muddled up. You can also plant like really smartly so that you confuse pests. So for example, a carrot fly won't lay eggs on a onion, right? And an onion fly in turn won't lay eggs on a carrot, and because they're both very fragrant, it confuses the pests, and that's some really great things as well. And I see that in America you have like hornworms and cucumber beetles and things like that. We don't have any of that. Our main ones at the allotment are rats, which to be honest they are dealing with. I actually spoke to the chairman last I was down the allotment, and he has done a massive effort on rabbits, and the next massive effort will be on rats, so which is very exciting. So hopefully the rats will be dropping in population, but that is an issue at the allotment. For example, I will just simply not grow sweet corn down the allotment. There is literally no point. Every year, everyone loses their sweet corn to rats, because rats are better at telling when they're exactly ripe, and they're there all the time. So they will eat. I've known someone to go down the allotment and pull like, I don't know, 10 corns off their sweet corn and be like, oh brilliant, I'll come back tomorrow when these are ripe, or I'll come back at the weekend when these are ripe, because they weren't quite ripe yet, and rats had stripped them all before they got down. So I actually grow my sweet corn in my back garden, which if anyone knows, I really find sweet corn super creepy. The sound of wind going through sweet corn creeps me out terribly, because do you remember the film Jeepers Creepers? That came out when I was a teenager, and I watched it, and I haven't watched it since, but I am traumatized by that. And every time I hear the sound they make, it's a different sound when they like against each other. Oh. So I'm like, literally every time I hear it, I'm like in my garden. But we got tons and tons and tons last year, which is really cool. We're actually going to expand that patch, because we looked at last year and we were like, yeah, we love the sweet corn, but there wasn't quite enough, because I think I've just used my last bag of sweet corn. Not bad, it's like coming up to February. I've used it all winter long, but I'd like it until like March maybe, or April, and then obviously in August you'll get more sweet corn. I like to do a couple of months without sweet corn, because then I'm like, oh, I really fancy some, so it's good to do without, you know what I mean? I quite like the I like eating seasonally because then I like have cravings for things like a fresh tomato. Dude, I can't even remember what a fresh tomato tastes like. It's been, October. September, October, he's snoring. September, October is the last time I had a fresh tomato, which is madness, isn't it? So it would be nice to have that. A fresh pepper would be nice too. Ooh. Another thing you need to take into consideration is your area, your plot. Is it shady? Has your neighbour got tons of trees? Is it full facing sun, which can be quite blistering, and you need to like create some shade? Windbreaks are super important too. I've actually planted trees and Jerusalem artichokes as windbreaks because we get really strong winds over the allotment. The last storm we had, people had sheds broken glass, greenhouses, because the wind rolls off of farmers' fields, which are notoriously flat and straight. The first thing to break the wind is our humble little allotment, and then after our allotment is fields. So it really doesn't matter which way they go, it really does need a windbreak. So I've actually created a windbreak, which will in turn create shade. So that is good and bad. Good because I have some things that really enjoy the shades, like lettuce. Lettuce really likes shade. It kind of bolts in the summer without a bit of shade, so that's fine. There's quite a few things, but there's also things that want full frontal sun, like most of what we call warm weather crops: tomatoes, peppers, courgettes, winter squashes, etc. All of those tender crops really enjoy lots and lots of sun, but you can get away with putting herbs, etc. in, and shrubbier. Is shrubbier already a word? Shrubs in the shades, and they don't really mind too much. One of the examples for supports and shades naturally would be the Three Sisters, which is where you grow sweet corn, beans, and you also grow some squashes in between in the same area. And this was really cool that the Native Americans did it, and it was with drying beans, drying corn, and winter squash, so that you just left the patch. When it all died, you went back over and you cleared it out. You can also grow, if you don't fancy growing sweet corn, sunflowers are a great option too. I love growing sunflowers because they're one of my favourite flower, but also I love the fact that they give food to the chickens and it lowers food bills, and even the ducks absolutely love it, but you have to peel them for them. So now you have an idea of like your space, what you want to grow, etc. The next thing you need to think about is your evil plan. So you need to start thinking about the actual plan that you want to do. Makes sense, right? Start your plants. How will you actually start your plants? Because if they're annuals, you've got two different ways of starting your plants. You've got seeds. You can start everything from seed. I pretty much start everything from seeds, apart from like trees. Although I have started some trees from seed. Or you can buy plants. Now, as a rule of thumb, seeds are going to be a lot cheaper. You can buy seeds. I mean, I've just bought some seeds today, and they were like quite expensive. They were like 5 seeds for like £6, right? Which is really expensive, but you know, they were a special variety. Now, saying that, a plant is so much more expensive. If you go down the garden centre, you might be paying like $6.99 or $5.99 or whatever for an entire plant, okay, which is quite decent size, about that big, but they do put them out super early, so don't buy them until, you know, you're past your last frost date. For us, it is round about the beginning of May, but it's quite dicey, so it can be, but they could be a late frost. So why buy them now? Buy them when you know you can plant them out that day. So buy them and they're hopefully already out and hardened off, because lots of the places around here already harden them off for you. Saves you a ton of work. And if you don't have any space indoors, that's a fantastic option. Now, I said I started everything off for seed. That's completely true. However, there were certain things that I really struggled in germinating when I first started gardening. So I'd go ahead and try to do them in seed because seed's quite cheap. You know, what am I wasting? Not very much. pennies. And then if I had an issue with germination, I just didn't understand the germination yet, I'd go ahead and buy the plants. And once I've kind of nursed the plants for a year, I found that germination was a lot easier because I had so much more knowledge of that plant. And I do not want to get to the stage where I fail with germination and I miss out a year of them plants. I don't want to do that. So I remember one time, and this was when like the first year I started gardening by myself, and I'd always been fine with germinating anything that I grew up planting with my nan, but my nan never did a courgette. I genuinely never ever grew up eating courgettes, which is madness. Anyway, I decided I wanted to try courgettes, so instead of going out to the supermarket like a normal human being and buying a single courgette and being like, oh, that's nice, I decided that I was going to grow 3 courgette plants. That's how you heard it, 3. So I planted my seeds, and they all rotted and died, and I couldn't understand why they'd rotted and died. So I bought some courgette plants and I planted them out, and they grew beautifully, and I got courgettes from them. It was really great. And then over the next year I like really researched it, and I realized that it's the way that I'm planting them. You've got to do courgette seeds like this, standing up on their side so they don't pull with any water in them. So since I started doing that, tons of germination. That's same with any sort of Cupid bit seed. So that really kind of like threw me through the loop until I was like, right, that's cool, I understand it now, I see how that works. So I do feel like there are some plants that you need a relationship with before you can grow them successfully, and it could be different for you, unless it's carrots, and then it's witchcraft if you can grow them. No one can grow. I strongly believe nobody grows carrots. They're magical. Or you so if you do buy them from the supermarket or from a local supplier, one great place to find them is on Facebook Marketplace, because lots of people sell them for about £1-2 each, or one. I think last year I had an issue. My seeds for my aubergines were super old, didn't germinate, I ran out of time. I was like, oh no. I went on Facebook Marketplace and I bought, I think it was like 6 for £5, which is really good. I thought it was really good. So once again, there are my backups, you know. I'm not going to lie to you and say I'm perfect in every way. It's not true. If you don't believe me, ask anyone I know in real life and they'll tell you. If you are starting from seed though, you save a lot of money, but you also get better varieties and more cool varieties, really cool. But you need to think, right, where are you going to start them? Are you going to start on your windowsill? How are you going to protect them? Like, I've actually got, because you know I'm in like the middle of all of this renovation stuff, we've actually got single glazed windows at the back of the property still. We don't like to go into the 21st century all in one go, because it'd just be overwhelming. So little by little. Well, the issue that we have over there, that in the day, even in the winter, it's absolutely boiling, but it gets really cold at night. So you've got to make sure that you either are taking them in, or you're doing some sort of layer of fleece and stuff. What I used to do is I used to put them up on the really sunny windowsill, which is south facing, which is behind you, and I used to get a load of tin foil, and I used to line tin foil on like cereal boxes, and I used to have them so that crimpled up, sorry. So you crimple them up, then you tape them onto cereal boxes, and what happens is it bounces back. And the reason why you want them crimpled up is it bounces the light in all different directions. It's more likely to get onto your seedlings instead of just being a sheet that goes in one direction. Does that make sense? So you get more directional light. So I used to do that, and I found that made my seedlings less leggy. Leggy means when they go really tall, when they go really tall and they are really weak, so you don't want that. Also, just dragging your hand back and forward over them continuously is really good for them. Obviously not hard, not smash them into the soil, but that really makes it recreates natural conditions of wind. Wind makes seedlings much stronger, so if you do that, over the top of them, they'll actually grow thicker stems so that they are more resilient for you doing that, which is good. So that was something that I did until, to be honest, my partner was like, please, can we stop doing that? I hate it. So I don't do that anymore because I got in trouble. But that is an option if you live alone or somewhere somewhere with a more agreeable partner. And I shouldn't say that too loud because he won't put up my seed tent. Talking of which, seed tents, you can actually go ahead and start them under grow lights in a seed tent. I do that because you can control all of the conditions. So for example, I have a heater so it's warm, I have lights, I can have a fan, I can have everything I need in there, so that I can go ahead and ensure that my seedlings have a really good condition to make really stable and strong seedlings. Now also it does allow me to be a little bit lazy, and I can go ahead and sow my seedlings a little bit later if I have a grow light, because you can go ahead and turn the grow light on and off whenever you want. I could go ahead and leave it on for day and night for a month if I wanted to. Okay, so it can catch up weeks really quickly, or you could slow it down. So you're like, okay, these seedlings are getting a little bit too big, I actually don't want them to get too big, I will put it down to 6 hours a day of light. Does that make sense? So you want like a nice balance where they're not getting leggy but they're not going too fast. I've made the mistake of starting things like courgettes in January, which is awful because courgettes are super fast growing. So making sure you understand, okay, it says on seed pack I can grow these in January, but where am I going to put them? You know, that's what I think now after all these years of growing and thinking, yeah, no, I totally want to have 33 sweet corn plants that are the size of me in May. Where are you going to put them? Yeah, that's like my constant thought to myself, is where are you going to put this stuff? Okay, so, and also you need all the big pots, you need to be able to move them out, and I generally move them sweet corn plants out in buckets because they were so huge, and genuinely I got such an early harvest, which is awesome, but also like it was a right pain in the bum to have to move them around. I had to harden them off, so I'm like taking them out every day, etc. It's really, really difficult. Another option is a heated greenhouse. If you got a heated greenhouse, it's really cool. I did that, was it 2 years ago? I did the heated greenhouse. Remember, I can't remember, I think it was 2 years ago. And then I turned the heater off. I didn't even mean to. I was playing with the buttons and I turned the heater off, and it was one of those paraffin heaters, which is super cool, but I turned it off and all my seedlings died. And I cried because I was gutted. But that sort of thing sometimes happens, so you've got to make sure you triple check everything. People insulate their greenhouses and stuff. Just remember, a greenhouse is not the same as a house. It's going to get cold, so you do need to heat it in some way, but you can run a heated greenhouse. That's a perfectly viable option if you have that. And I just got a little paraffin heater, which is like a big round bottom that you fill up the paraffin with, and it's got like a little cotton wick, and you turn the little cord and the wick gets bigger or smaller depending on how hot it is. And the issue is it was getting really warm and my plants were like, oh, it's too hot for me, and then so I turned it down and I turned it off instead of down, and the frost got them at night time and they pretty much all died. It was a great time. Learned something though, learned a lot that year. Oh, and also for seeds, the last thing is fit your seedlings in around your life. This year I've learnt that like incredibly. So I look at a load of things and I'm like, oh, that's got to be planted in March. March is not going to be a great time of year for me because I'm going to be having a new baby, so I need to be more realistic. I either start them in February or start them in April. So I've really kind of moved things around so that I'm not starting things too early, because I'm now concerned about what I'm going to do over that period where, you know, you have a baby, you don't want to walk around or do anything. It's just the way life is. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to pick things that make my life easier. I'm going to pick the grow tent. I'm going to mix up a load of, we'll have a big supply of water so that if anyone's helping me out, it's super convenient for them to water. And I'm going to use coconut coir this year. But why? Because it doesn't dry out as much, so I can go ahead and not worry about not watering it every day, which is super cool for me personally. We've decided where we're going to start and what we're going to do. We're either going to buy plants or we're going to get seeds. It's very exciting, I know. So you need to consider two things. You've got fast growing crops like your courgettes. You don't want to grow those too early because you'll be living in a jungle. And you've got your slow growing, long season crops. That's your peppers, your chilies, some tomatoes, and particularly your aubergines. Those are slow growers. So you want to go ahead and grow those in about February. I like to do them about halfway through February. The issue that I see with tomatoes, the cherry tomatoes grow really fast, so do not worry about them. You'll get a crop in a few weeks, it's fine. But the really large, like your Dr. Witchy, your pineapple, hillbilly, etc., all of those really large tomatoes are going to take a little bit longer, so go ahead and get those in nice and early so that you have a decent crop of them, because you don't want to go ahead and put them all out and get late blight and they all go before you get a taste of them tomatoes. Well, I don't want that anyway, and I really love the huge tomatoes. I think they look beautiful, so I've got quite a few new ones this year which I want to specifically have a munch on before they go ahead and get blight, so I'm going to start them off a little bit earlier. Also, you can look at things like your chitting dates. Your chitting date is when you start sprouting your potatoes or growing chits on them. They're like little sprouts or eyes that are growing on those potatoes. Now, the thing that I do to find out my gardening day, my chitting date, which is the 3rd week in February, okay, is I go onto a website called Gardening Force, and I'll probably show you something like there. It's really good. Not only do they tell you when to start chitting your potatoes, but they tell you week by week what to do for the whole year. So like, plant this, sow this, plant this out now, go ahead and harvest this, it'll be ready. And I think that's a really great thing to do when you are a first time or not experienced gardener, because then you can be like, okay, this is what I meant to do this week, and it keeps you nice and busy with like weekend jobs. Okay, honestly, I've used it and I've only used it on the weekend, so it's not like you have to like cancel your life plans and spend your life harvesting, okay, although why wouldn't you? That's what I do in the summer. But you know, you can go ahead and have something to do every little while, and it also, as long as you keep up on the water, do not overwater, but as long as you keep up on a decent amount of water, you should be quite successful with using that website. So I really recommend it, and it's free. I should have said that first. It's free. I like free. So that's a really great website to do, and it literally tells you from chitting your potatoes all the way to like in the deepest of winter when to prune your apple tree. It's a really good thing, and you just Google the rest, watch YouTube videos, etc. Like, you have so much. I like think it's incredible. It overwhelms me sometimes that we have more we have more data and information on our phones than what they use to put people on the moon. That's just like, it blows my mind. I have a very small mind, so it's not long to blow. The major thing when you're going to plant out is not to overcrowd. So we've got our seedlings, we've got our plants, we're ready to plant out. You'll probably be planting out, if you're like me, I'm zone 9A, hardiness zone. I'm just outside of London. So, well, it's hard to say I'm just outside of London because London keeps getting bigger. So I'm like very close to London now. It's like, it's coming towards me, no! So, so we have quite a warm climate because cities make the area warmer, basically, in a nutshell. So I'm in zone 9A, so my last frost date is at the beginning of May. So what I do at the beginning of May is I literally like look at my phone, which is all the technology I'll ever need, and I'm like literally looking at the frosts, and if it goes below 4, I will never plant something out. So I'm looking for a 2-week forecast with no 4s. Okay, so I want it like 5 and above. Yeah, and I know that you don't actually get a frost unless it hits 0, but there are some times where you get trapped air or whatever, and you get a micro frost in a very small area if it drops below 4, and it's happened to me. I've lost things. You know what I mean. However, if you've got peppers or chili, you must not let them go out into the world until the temperatures do not drop below 10. They will get stunted. You don't want that. So if you want an abundant harvest, you keep those bad boys inside, nurtured and loved, and you tell them you love them every day until that temperature doesn't drop below 10 at night time. And then when it's above 10 at night time, you stick those bad boys out after you've hardened them off, and they'll be fine, and you'll get a bumper harvest, which is really exciting. I wish I knew that years ago. I actually only found that out like 3-4 years ago, and I was like, why have I only got 1 pepper? And that was the reason why. Let's actually talk about the plan that I've made. ramble. So what I do, when I say I mean my partner, because I sent him out, is we drew this amazing map of the allotment. And this amazing map of the allotment, we have measured each bed with I keep calling it a laser level, but he keeps telling me it's not a laser level. It's called a laser measurer. And I would have shown you, but he took it back to work. So I've measured each bed. So therefore, I know how big each path is. I know how much each bed is long-wise and stuff. So I can work out exactly how many of what I want in each bed. And what has basically happened on here, okay? And you can't see because it's really small. So I'll probably take a photo of it and put it up. I am not an artist, by the way, so you can look and be like, wow, that's terrible. Some of the beds I do question whether they're as big as I think they are, but apart from that, it's fine. Some of it needs to be remeasured, but what I've done is I've written in there whether or not it's a wood chip bed, a black plastic bed, or a no dig bed, so I know what could go in them beds. For example, there's no point of planting a load of carrots under black plastic, they'll die. There's no point of putting them in the wood chip beds because, well, they're my potato beds and they're not going to do as well. They need to go in the no dig beds, etc. So I have them for each one of my allotments because they're the biggest sort of way to go. So this is how I start off. So I've written all my perennials on there. For example, this bed is asparagus. This bed I've already planted with garlic, so I know that's going to be a garlic bed. This one currently has brassicas in it, so I know that means it's got a netted tunnel over it as well. This is a wood chip bed, which I know is going to be for my potatoes because I do the same thing all the time. This is a no dig bed. It's going to have onions in it. So some of these stuff I've already sort of planned out in my head. The raspberries are going to stay, the rhubarb's going to stay, the tayberry is going to stay. Then of course I've got my chicken coop. This is always going to be tomatoes. I love tomatoes. I do about 60 every year, so it's going to be that. Now, how do I know how many things I want? Basically, I make a list like this, and it is a very detailed list that I never finished. So there's certain things that I like double check that I know what I'm doing, because it's been about a year since I've gone ahead and grown some onions. So how many onion plants do I have? I have 300 garden sets. I have 300 onion sets to set this year. I will also grow some from seed. So in my head, I have to think, right, I know I need so many beds so that I can fit 300 onions in, okay? I know that I need 160 garlics every year. That is like my steady flow of garlic. I need 160, 160, 160. Okay, that's for eating and saving seeds. So in my head, I'm like, right, I need to know how many beds I need for 160 garlics, okay? So that's in my head too. I also know that last year I did, I think it was 36 sweet corns in the area that I had, and I've doubled that area because I want more sweet corn, so I'm probably going to get 72, so I'll have 72. Maths. So I've gone through and done that sort of thing, and I go onto websites and I just type in how many, I don't know, blueberries does someone need per plant per year, and I look and I think, oh, that's a reasonable 2 bushes, that's quite reasonable. I can't actually grow blueberries, but I look at it and go, yeah, that's quite reasonable, and I do all of these calculations and like etc, and then I throw it all out the window because I bought a persimmon tree. So there's that sort of thing as well to it. And once I did that, what I went ahead and did is I used Grow More, I think it is, and I used that what's it called, software, and I went ahead and put all my diameters in to the computer like that, and I realised that I swear some of them are wrong, but whatever. I did that, and I was able to work out month by month by month what was going to be in the allotment patches, so that I could go ahead and plan what to grow. So I know that in May, when the last frost date hits, I know my peppers, my tomatoes, well, at the end of May, my peppers will go out, my chilies will go out at the end of May. At the beginning of May will probably be tomatoes, aubergines, my squash, my winter squash, it'll be sweet corn, it'll be all of those warm weather crops, and I'll also have some cabbages and stuff like that to replace. And I know at that time as well, most of my cold loving crops, my cold crops, will be finished, so they'll be going out. I'll have another bed and I'll be able to put things in there, etc. I know that my swede will be going in at a certain month, I think it's June, etc. So I'm like getting ready to like have the rotation of my crops so that I always have something growing, so that when it comes to having an empty bed, I'm like, oh, I know what's going in there now. Okay, so in the back of my mind I have that, so that I know when I have to be hardening things off for etc. It's all very loose in my brain though. Like, I'm not going to tell you that like on the 7th of May this is what's going to happen, because the weather might not be playing ball then. I like to water the actual patch really well, and hopefully plant out in a drizzle as well. I like planting out in a drizzle because it really waters in the plants very nicely. Another thing is I say all of this to you, and you can see that I've spent ages spending so much time going ahead and planning, and things won't grow, things will grow too many. I will suddenly throw it all out the window and do whatever I want. I do it every year. So allow yourself to make mistakes, allow yourself to take risks, try not to overcrowd, and make sure that you are doing something that you feel super passionate about, and that is the main thing. And mostly, don't get disheartened when things die, okay? Everything dies. You will kill plants. It's going to happen. It's okay. You'll drop plants. My daughter, was it last year or the year before? She was like, oh, can I help? I was like, yeah, sure. And she was holding an entire tray of chilies, and she dropped them. Like, it wasn't her fault. I shouldn't have given it to her. She didn't see it, whatever. She dropped them accidentally. And she was like, oh no. And to be honest, I was quite miffed at the time, but looking back at it now, who cares? It's just a few plants. I remember her being like, I'm really sorry. And I was like, it's fine. But inside I'm like, please, I just need my babies. But, you know, it's just one of those things that happen. So things like that are going to happen. You're going to knock some seedlings over. You might accidentally be like, oh, I thought you were watering the seedlings and they're all dead. It's okay. At the end of the day, you've got that backup. There's no shame in popping down to B&Q and grabbing a couple of plants, especially when they're in sale. You know, it's okay. That's why I told you Facebook is really good for grabbing up some of those seedlings. If you have too many, perhaps you're like, oh, I'm really bad at growing, planting tomatoes, and you have like 65 more tomatoes left, go ahead and put them up on Amazon, on eBay. Not on eBay, on Facebook, and you can get a couple of quid for them, or give them away for free, give them away to a primary school so they can plant it. Lots of primary schools have like either allotment patches or areas where they'll grow a load of plants, so it's nothing to, don't stress, it's meant to be fun. Have fun. So yeah, that's what I think anyway. So you'll see that I've done a lot of work planning, mostly because I have an issue where I can't, you know, I want to be free, and I feel like I spend a lot of time micro organising when it comes to not being able to do much. But going back to it, all of your seed packets will tell you a spacing, and all of your if you use that software, it will tell you a spacing. If you Google it, sometimes I'm out on the allotment plot and I'm literally like, how many inches is it between, like, I don't know, garlic? And I'm like, I have no idea how many inches it is. Can't remember. And I just go ahead and Google it. Honestly, I just Google it on my phone. I got my hori knife, which has a measurement on it, and I literally write like how many blah blah blah, and it will pop up, and I'm like, sweet, and then I'll go ahead and plant them out like that. That's okay too. You don't have to be super organised. You just don't. Okay, as long as you know like general gist. I've planted that one up. You put up signs, whatever. It's up to you. The world is your oyster. You can do anything if you put your mind to it. With a little bit of effort, you'll be reaping the rewards for an entire year, which is super cool. So, I'll see you next time. Oh, and also that Grow More website will tell you if you stretch out your, what's it called, gardening patch. It will tell you how many exactly you can get within there. You can adjust it so that, for example, you don't have to do 1 tomato per square foot. You can do it so that it's 3 feet between them. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, just make sure that you do what works for you. Now, you'll watch a YouTube channel and you'll be like, oh my goodness, that person, they really know their carrots. And then you'll do it and you'll be like, betrayer, it doesn't work for me. And that's because every single soil, even like I live 2 miles, I think it is, away from my allotment. It's very close. And the environment that I have in my garden is light years away from the environment that I have down the road. So every single person is different, and my front garden, which is north facing, is completely different to my back garden, which is south facing. So I can't do the same things. I actually once, like one of my first years growing, I grew peppers in my front garden and they did terribly, and they were really bitter and horrible. So it could be the variety, to be fair with that, but it was absolute waste of existence. So now, what do I grow out my front garden? I grow all my cold shade loving friends and they absolutely thrive. So it makes sense, doesn't it? So experiment, get things wrong, it's okay. It doesn't matter. And I hope that you have an amazing gardening season, and I shall see you next time. And if you haven't done already, please consider subscribing, because it helps us out and it helps us grow. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. So I forgot what I was going to say. It's okay because I wrote it down. This is the very rare time I've actually got something to say before I turn the camera on. Enjoy it, it never happens. Okay. On my days, so I got a phone call, so I'm like, alright, I'm gonna go phone call. So I went and did my phone call, and I thought that basically I dropped my Rode, this little thing here. So I'm like, oh my goodness. I walked to the kitchen and I walked back to the sofa on this phone call, and I was like, how have I lost it? I've gone through everything in the kitchen, like looked everywhere, gone through, because we always have like a pile of like boxes in the kitchen from like things that we've bought and blah blah blah. So I've like gone through all of those, ripped them all up, like stacked them, because it needed to be doing anyway. It was like one of my jobs for today. And so I did that, and I couldn't find it. So I'm like, it's gonna be in the bin. It's in the bin. So I looked all the way through the bin, which was gross. And I was like, could not find it. My back's killing me, my hips are killing me. And I'm like so upset. And I kind of look at the camera, and I've taken it off while talking on the phone and clipped it onto my tripod. And the worst bit is that's quite typical thing for me to do. I was like this close to call my partner to be like, I can't find my Rode, and then him to be like, well, I've told you to look up. Okay, let me just check the sound's working, because it's my luck. Hello, sound, are you working? The sound is working. He does have a head, by the way. It's just off the side of the sofa. He's super bendy, so he just like sleeps with his head on the floor. But he's fine, I promise you, he's not headless. What it? I forgot what I was talking about. Plants, yeah.